Okay, welcome back to my new Python tutorial. In this video I would like to talk about functions, since functions are very essential for any kind of programming. So whenever you write a program in Python, I'm sure that you will use functions in one way or the other. So it's better to concentrate a little bit on this topic and to go through this in detail. So in order to do that, I just created a new Python file as usual, and I called this now functions.py. And we define now our first and easiest function with the keyword def. So every function which you define, or whenever you start the definition of a function, you have to start with def. This is very important. And then you have to insert the function name. For example, in this case, I just call it f, but you can give, of course, any other name. And then it's very important that you stop here with parentheses. So after the name, parentheses has to come, and then you have to insert a colon, exactly in the same way how you do it for for loops or for if conditions. So now Python knows a block starts, and you go basically now into the scope of that function. So everything which you add here below this with an indent is part of that function. So let's suppose this function should not do anything else except printing out something, and this could be maybe again hello world. So now we leave the scope of the function by going back to the beginning. We delete this indent now, and now we type in just f and then parentheses again. So when we do this, then Python knows, or the Python interpreter which goes through that to that file knows that first we define the function with the name f, and then we call that function here, and then Python does not do anything else except just executing the functions or the commands that we put into our function. So when we write now f parentheses and we run the program, then you can see the output is just here hello world. Because it just executes what is in this function. But of course, this is not everything what you can do with that. You can do much more. You can, for example, use also arguments or input parameters. Both words one can use as synonyms. So let's suppose I write here f parentheses a, which means a function of the argument a. And then I write here print a, and then print a. And then, of course, I also have to tell Python what a is. So for every argument which I put here in parentheses, I have to insert a value when I call the function. So in this case, let's suppose I want that a should be equal to, as we have done it before, hello world maybe. And now I can run the program. And now you can see it, the same string that we have inserted before inside that function here. We insert it now as an argument, and it gives out hello world. So everything works quite well. And to go a little bit more deeper into this topic, we create now a new function, and we call that maybe rect for rectangle, because this function should calculate the area of a rectangle with two sides a and b, and we give out this area later with a print command. So now we define here this function rect, and we give two arguments to that. One is a and b for these two sides, and then inside that function we define a variable which we call maybe area, and we say here just simply a times b, and then we have to insert something which is called a return value. So when we call that function, then at that position where the function is called, this return value appears there, and then we can hand over this return value to a variable, for example, and give out this variable. So when we write here return area, then this variable area is the return value of that function. And now we can write here f, and then these can be two floats or integers, for example. So if you write here 3,5, this means that now the argument a takes the value 3 and the argument b takes the value 5. We could also write a equals 3 and b equals 5 to make sure that Python knows about the order. Or even if we write it in such a way, we could put b equal 5 in front of that and a equals 3 behind, it leads to the same result. So in this case, we let it as it was before, just 3,5, which is the easiest way how to do that. And this should be maybe equal to a variable a, although we have defined already here variable a, it doesn't matter. This is inside the scope of the function. These are so-called local variables. So we can just use a new one here, which we call a, and then we can write here print a, or we can also directly insert the function here into this print command. It doesn't matter. The important thing is the return value is now equal, or this variable a equals the return value of the function. So now we can run that. And of course, the function name f does not exist. We have to call it rect. And now we see, it gives as an output value 15, which means that this function multiplies a and b, hands over this result to the variable area, returns this variable, and hands over this variable, this return value, to the variable a, and we give out this variable a. So this is in principle everything which you have to really know. When you know these fundamental basics and understand how it works, then you know most of the things which are important regarding functions, and you could use this now in your own programs. However, there are a few more tricks that you can do with functions, and these tricks I want to show now in the next minutes. For example, one trick is that in contrast to, like for example, C++, you can also return two values. In C++ you can only return one, but here in Python you can directly return two. So in this case, let's suppose we don't want to calculate only the area of a rectangle, but we also want to calculate the length of both sides. So in this case, we can create a new variable length, and this we calculate with 2 times a plus b. So that's a simple formula. And let's suppose the return values should be area and length. So we have to write it in such a way. And then we of course also have to type in here two variables, a and l, let's suppose. And these two return values will be then handed over to a and l. So if we write here print a and l, and we run the program, then you see that the area a is again 15, and the length it also calculated, which is actually 3 plus 5 times 2, which is 16. So in order to prove that it works, we can also put in some other values, 3 and 10 for example, and now you can see that the area is 30 and the length is 26. So even two return values are working quite well. Okay, in some cases you want to keep the number of arguments arbitrary. So you don't want to define how many parameters you have in the beginning. And for that we can use actually this star and write here or give the name of the argument. It's a type of list actually. So we can write here star and args, for example, for arguments. And now we can write here length 2 times a, and this should be maybe the first one. So again, this will be number 0 because we always start to count from 0 on. And here we have to write plus args 1. And the same we have to do here, args 0 times args 1. And the rest remains unchanged. So if we run now our program, then we could even insert here more, but let's suppose we put another 20 here inside, but this will not change anything because we don't access this argument. But if we remove these two and only insert here 1, which is 3, then of course you receive an error message because Python also expects another argument in that list, which is called args1. And this is not existing, so it gives an error message. In this case, if we write again 310 and run the program, the result is the same what we also obtained before. So it does not change anything, but just for your knowledge how to also insert an arbitrary number of arguments. You can also do the same with keywords. So let's suppose we don't only write 1 star here, but 2 stars. And then in this case, we can change this 0 and 1 to the keywords that we want to use. So let's suppose we call that A, and we call that here B, and again here A and B. I think here should be also a bracket. And then here we have to write, now this will lead to an error message because we don't know what, or Python doesn't know what is a and b. So we can write here a equals 3 and b equals 10 again with the same keywords that we have used before. And when we now run the program, then you see the results are similar to what we obtained before. This is also just for your knowledge how that works. Yeah, but I think it's just good to know that these kind of possibilities exist. Yeah, we can also insert some default values in Python. Yeah, this is also a very important thing. This I used quite often because it makes the life a little bit easier in some cases. So let's suppose we go back to our previous version and we write here a equals 5, b equals 3. Yeah, and then again we change here again these args to a and b, and here in this case a and b. And now we don't insert any value here when we call that function and we run the program. Now the result is 15 and 16 because the standard values are 5 and 3, but we can easily override this by, for example, writing here again 10 and 5, for example, and run that. Then a, which is before that 5, will be overwritten with 10, and b, which is 3, will be overwritten with 5, and then the results are also matching. You can also then omit one value. For example, you can only write rect 10, and when you start this, then 3 remains as it is, or b equals 3, but a will be overwritten by 10, and then the result is matching to a equal to 10 and b equal to 3. So this is in principle everything which I want to explain regarding functions. One more thing which is important to know is recursion. Yeah, so the concept of recursion is very important in every programming language, but in Python especially, I think, because you can do many things with that. And in order to explain what it means, I will create now a function which calculates the faculty of a given value. Yeah, for example, just an integer. Recursion basically means that a function is calling itself again and again until a specific condition is reached where it stops, and then it returns a certain value. And this we will do now. As I said, we create a new function which we call maybe faculty. I think this is the easiest recursive function that you can define, and the parameter, the argument should be called maybe n. And then we have to insert one if condition here, which is if n larger than 0, so 1, 2, 3, and so on, then the return value of that function should be n times faculty, the function itself, of n minus 1, or else we just want to return the value 1, if n is equal to 0, for example. So what it does actually, you insert a value, let's suppose 5, and then this is larger than 0, of course, so Python multiplies 5 times this function of 5 minus 1, which is 4, and then again it inserts 4 into faculty again, and 4 minus 1 into faculty again, which is a 3, and so on. So at the end you get a multiplication of 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, because when n finally reaches 0, then the value 1 is returned, which means the function is stopping at this position. And to prove that this works, we can write now here directly print. We don't want to create a new variable, so we can write here print faculty, and then we can insert the value 5, and as a result we get 120, and you can prove this easily with any calculator. So when you write 5 times 4 times 3 and so on, then you get at the end a result of 120. So this is a very simple explanation of a very powerful concept, and you should really keep this in mind for certain programs which you write. Maybe you need recursion frequently. Okay, and one really last thing which I want to explain is related to variables that we have already explained in, or some things I already explained in the first video. But now I mentioned before that there are local variables and also global variables. So I want to explain now what is the difference between these two, because you will maybe have to deal with these kind of things quite often. So it's better maybe to get a feeling for that. And for that purpose, we define now a new variable, which we call maybe a, and this could be just a string, which we call, again, hello world. And then we define here function f. And by the way, you can also define your function anywhere in the code. You don't have to do it in the beginning of your script. You can also do it at the end. But the important thing is that the definition of the function happens before you call the function. You cannot call the function if it does not exist. So you can write now def, and we don't want to insert any input parameter. And this function should again not do anything else except printing the string. And when we now write f in parentheses, you will see it worked as expected. We get our string here, hello world. And then again, we could maybe write here print a below that and run our program. And you see now again 2 times hello world appear. And this is because this global variable a is once called or is once accessed within this function f, which is no problem at all. And also below that function, outside of the function scope, by just using another print command. And this is important to know, that whenever you create a variable outside of a function, it's considered as a so-called global variable, which you can access anywhere. But if you would do that inside the function, so you write here a equals hello world in the definition of f, and now you run the program, then it will give an error message, a is not defined, just because you can only access the variable a within that function. It's very simple and easy, straightforward to know. But it's good to know actually that such a concept exists, and now we created a so-called local variable, which means that a is only accessible inside that function here. We can, however, also create global variables inside functions, and for that we have to create or insert this keyword global in front of a, and then define here or define the value of a, which is hello world. And when we now run the program, then again it works as before, because now with the statement global a, Python creates a local variable which makes it global at the end, and then we can access this from anywhere else, again even within another function. So this is really everything I think which is on my list, which I want to explain. I hope that this was very beneficial and you understand now the concept of functions. There are many more things to teach about that, regarding, for example, lambdas, which is a very nice concept in Python, and Python is also a functional language, so it means that you can do operations with function as if they were variables. You can put functions as input parameters to other functions, and you can make any kind of things which you can imagine actually. So these things I will maybe discuss a little bit later when we go further into the topics, but also when I show some examples about Python, of course. But for the time being, I think this is everything which you need to know. And now you can play around with that, try to change a few things to get a feeling for functions. And hopefully you like the video. If you do, please hit the like button. Please subscribe my channel if you have not done so far. And please stay tuned for my next video. And I think there I will finally cover the topic classes. And after that, you are, I think, fully prepared. When we also discussed about modules, maybe you are fully prepared to write your own very powerful Python programs. And until then, see you later.